Stock market crash coming? Hey, it's Linus here. Recently, the stock market has been weak, and this leads us to the question is, why is the stock market going down? So in this video, I'll be sharing with you my thoughts on stock market, some of the things that I'm taking a look at right now, and some of the actions that I'll be taking in the stock market moving forward. If we take a look at the price chart for the S&P 500, which is an index which tracks the overall US stock market, we see that prices have been declining for a couple of days. Since the high over here, prices has been forming lower lows. So we see a lower low here, lower low here, lower low here, lower low here. This was an exception, and then another lower low here. So prices have been declining for a couple of trading sessions now. And this leads us to the question, is a stock market crash and a stock market correction on the horizon? To answer that question, we have to first take a look at the definition of a stock market crash and a stock market correction. So first, we'll take a look at the definition of a stock market crash. So a stock market crash is defined when prices fall by more than 20% from its highs. So for example, if the high for the stock market is at $100 and the price of the stock market declines below $80, this means that the stock market is in a crash because prices have fell by more than 20% from its highs. And for a stock market correction is defined when prices fall by more than 10% but less than 20% from its highs. So a price decline of anywhere between 10% to 20% is defined as a stock market correction. So now that we know the definition of a stock market crash and the definition of a stock market correction, let's go back onto our price chart to see whether prices are experiencing a correction and a crash. So the high for the S&P 500 is at this price level of around $454. So we click over here, and then where we are currently at right now is over at this point over here, $443. So you can see that from the high of prices to where we are currently at, where prices close for the day, prices have only declined by about 2%. So based on the criteria and definition of a stock market correction and a stock market crash, what we are experiencing right now with the S&P 500 is far from a correction or a crash. Because remember, a stock market correction is defined when prices decline by more than 10% but less than 20% from its highs. And a stock market crash is when prices decline by more than 20% of its highs. So we are still some way off a stock market correction and a stock market crash. Furthermore, if we remove this thing over here and we zoom out, we see that so far, the S&P 500 managed to found support at this 50-day moving average. So the 50-day moving average is the green line over here. And we see that whenever prices decline, it declines back into the 50-day moving average and it finds support at the 50-day moving average. So over here, it went up again and it declines. Again, it found support at the 50-day moving average. It also found support at the 50-day moving average over here, over here, and now we are currently over here. And right now we see prices over here slightly above the 50-day moving average. So the S&P 500 still hasn't broken below the 50-day moving average. Coupled with the fact that the S&P 500 has only declined by about 2% from its highs, I'm not too worried about a correction or a crash coming just yet. However, with that said, some of the signs that I'm taking a look at do give me a cause for concern. The first sign of concern is the volume on down days. So you see over here, on these days, we see that volume on the downside has been steadily increasing and above the 50-day moving average. So in an uptrend, ideally we want to see volume increasing when prices are increasing and volume decreasing when prices are decreasing. But as we can see on this chart over here, the opposite is true. Volume on the upside has been relatively lower and volume on the downside has been relatively larger. So over here, as prices increase, we can see that volume has been decreasing, and when prices decrease, we see volume increasing. Over here, the same thing is true. When prices are increasing, we see that volume has been relatively lower, but when prices are decreasing, then volume starts to pick up. And this is not just true for the S&P 500, but also for the Nasdaq. So if we take a look at the Nasdaq over here, we see that in the recent decline, volume has picked up over here. So whenever prices are declining in an uptrend, we ideally want to see volume slowing down. But in this case, for the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq, volume has been picking up when prices are decreasing. So that is a first sign of concern for me. The second sign of concern for me is that the S&P 500, the Dow Jones and the Nasdaq has all been declining in the past couple of days. So far we have taken a look at the prices for the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq. So now let's take a look at the Dow Jones. So for the Dow Jones, we see that prices for the Dow Jones has been declining recently. So all three indexes in the US stock market has been going down in tandem. And that is something to pay attention to because this means that the overall US stock market is relatively weak right now. Because if all three major indexes in the US stock market are decreasing together, this means that the majority of the stocks in the US stock market are also experiencing declines. And when a majority of stocks in the stock market is declining, this can be a potential start of a market correction and a market crash. So that's the second sign of concern that I'm looking at. Another sign of concern for me is that recently a number of my stocks has been stopped out. This is definitely more subjective because this is based on my own trading experience and result currently. So whenever a number of my stocks get stopped out, this causes me to pay even more attention to the overall market and how the market is doing. And another thing that I'm taking a look at is the advanced decline line. So if we take a look at the New York Stock Exchange advanced decline line, the blue line is the New York Stock Exchange Composite Index and the red line is the advanced decline line. And this chart over here is the weekly chart for the advanced decline line. And we see that on the right side over here, as the New York Stock Exchange Composite Index increases, the advanced decline line over here has been flat. So ideally, as prices of the index increases, we also want to see the advanced decline line also increases. However, recently the advanced decline line has been flat. And this means that as the overall index increases, the number of stocks and securities that are participating in this rise in price has flatlined. So that's another thing that I'm looking out for. So while the decline in the S&P 500 right now as of the filming of this video is around 2% only, and it's still some way off from a stock market correction and a stock market crash, there are still some signs that warrant a closer look at the stock market moving forward in the next couple of days and weeks. And for me, what I'm doing right now in the stock market, because I've been stopped out of a number of positions so far, I'll be reducing my exposure in the stock market until things start to pick up again for me. And by reducing my exposure in the markets when things are not going very well for me, I'm ensuring that my exposure in the stock market is the least when I'm trading the worst. And when my trading picks up again and I increase my exposure in the markets, I'm ensuring that my exposure in the market is higher when I'm performing well. And that is how I manage my risk in the stock market. Hopefully you have learned something from this video. If you did, smash that like button because it will really help the channel grow and allow me to produce more content such as this. And if you are new to this channel and haven't already subscribed, make sure you subscribe to my channel because each week I release new videos about investing, trading, and the stock market. I'll see you in those other videos to your financial success.